Ever wish a podcast would explain how to get better faster from the standpoint of longevity, biohacking, and personalized functional medicine? Co-hosts Dr. Jason Bradley and James Chester, along with executive producer Rachel Bradley, bring you the Get Better Faster podcast. Their mission is radically simple: to revolutionize health by connecting people with the experts, technologies, and protocols that mainstream medicine ignores. Because people deserve to get better faster.
Hey, I'm Dr. Jason Bradley, and along with my co-host James Chester, we want to welcome you to another exciting edition of the Get Better Faster podcast. Today, we're joined by Dr. Pat Luse, a board-certified chiropractic orthopedic physician who's treated over 25,000 patients worldwide. With more than 45 years of clinical experience, Dr. Luse has distinguished himself as one of America's most highly trained chiropractors, holding specialized degrees within chiropractic and orthopedics as well. He's the author of the groundbreaking book, The 7 Systems Plan, which offers a revolutionary approach to weight loss, chronic illness reversal, and anti-aging by addressing the root causes of health problems within the body's 7 interconnected systems. He has a clinic in South Sioux City, Nebraska, and it ranks among the country's top 1% of all clinics. He's helped countless patients reclaim their health without relying on dangerous drugs or invasive surgeries, and we're thrilled to have him share his wisdom with us today. Dr. Pat, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much for having me.
Yeah, Dr. Pat, I'm really excited to join you here today with Dr. Jason Bradley and to talk to you about your expertise in this health and wellness world. I think there's a lot of people out there that are looking for solutions for what they're dealing with, and a lot of them are super common. And there's experts out there like you that have been working with people. It looks like you've been out there for 45 years helping people with their conditions. And if anybody knows me, I love chiropractic, and I'm ready to interview another top leader in the profession. So thanks for joining us today.
You're welcome. Thank you.
Dr. Pat, could you tell us a little bit about what you do? Like, what is it that you do?
Well, it's summed up in the title of your podcast, Get Better Fast. I love that title. It'd be a good title for a book, but that's what I do. It doesn't have to take years or even months sometimes to reverse problems, and it doesn't have to be so complicated. I went through functional medicine training over 20 years ago, and I loved it. It was very good training, but it's just too expensive and too complicated. So I said, there's got to be a simpler path. And since I couldn't find it, I ended up inventing it. It worked extremely well in my practice. And then I wrote the book on it and put a course online for people. And now I'm training physicians all across America to do what I do.
I love that. Yeah. And I'm really interested in this 7 integrated systems of the body and looking at that, especially from a simplistic point of view, also trained in functional medicine. I agree with you. The interconnectedness of it all can get very overwhelming, not only to the patients sometimes because the body can be complex, but even to the practitioners. And what I want to hear more about for sure is the 7 systems, the integration, and the simplicity. How did you make it so? What is the 7 systems, and how did you make it so simple?
Well, let me just run through them real quickly, and I'll give you a few thoughts as we do. First and most important system is your structural system. That's your fat, muscle, and bone. And in America, how many people have problems with fat, muscle, or bone? Almost everyone. Mm-hmm. So we got to get that system working correctly. Second system is digestive system. And you guys know the importance of your microbiome and having a gut that's not leaky and having the right bacteria there. And it's really not that hard to fix these gut issues, but America has destroyed their microbiome. You got to have that good bacteria working for you. And then there's your delivery system. That's your heart and blood vessels. And the number one killer in America for men and women after they have menopause is heart problems. And heart problems can be prevented in almost every case and even reversed. One of the most amazing cases in my life was over 20 years ago when I reversed blockage of a coronary artery confirmed on imaging. And that was just kind of holy cow. We can really change the health of people if we just give the body what it needs. Then there's your energy system, your mitochondria. You got to have your mitochondria working, not just for energy, but for preventing cancer and keeping the cells working correctly. And then you need a system that helps everything communicate. Well, that's your communication system, which is Hormones, you gotta fix hormones. If your plan doesn't fix hormones, you're not going to be successful. Nerves, very important, and neurotransmitters. And then you have to have a system to defend your body. That's defense system or immune system. And lastly, detox system. Every one of them is extremely important. Any one of those can sabotage your health, and any one of those systems not working correctly can cost you your life or take away your health, as we found with COVID.
Well, I think it's really interesting too. And you're trained as a chiropractor. I think it's interesting that you come up with structure first, because the older I get, and this is just my twos. I don't know if these are listed in an order, but you mentioned structure first. I know the older I get, the more I wish I would have listened to what my structure needed and taken care of my structure as I was much younger. So I think that's very interesting. I also want to jump in and just say, Dr. Pat, you said America has destroyed their microbiome. And I fully agree with you on that. And I have a lot of thoughts on that myself, but I'd love to hear what you mean when you say that. Tell me what you mean.
Well, one of the things, artificial sweeteners, one packet of Splenda can wipe out half your good gut bacteria. So the artificial sweeteners, plus we don't put, what our microbiome needs to thrive is fiber. We got to have lots of fiber. And in America, we get less than 15 grams a day. And I think a lot of people way less than that. If we double or triple that, we feed that good bacteria. And you can put that bacteria in your gut every day of your life. If you don't feed it, it's not going to take hold and thrive and do what it's supposed to do. That's also one of the reasons that we're needing GLP-1. Your microbiome is supposed to produce GLP-1, but it doesn't if we don't have a healthy microbiome.
That's really interesting. Yeah, that's super interesting. I know, again, from personal experience, when I work with my patients, I say what we're talking about right now is weed, seed, and feed. We want to get rid of the bad stuff, whatever that happens to be. And like you said, coming back to the digestive system, we could have a whole 10-hour conversation just on the function of the digestive tract, right? But like you said, we've destroyed our microbiome. We've, destroyed our own systems of weeding things out, whatever those pathogens might be that we're getting in our food, water, et cetera. We try to seed it, but like you said, if we're not feeding that microbiome, if we're not giving it the fiber that it needs, we could just keep dumping probiotics in all day long, and we're not going to necessarily, see some benefits there.
Yeah. One of my questions for you, Dr. Pat, is why don't they make it front and center for us to follow this plan? Like the seven systems approach. Like, why wouldn't it be like recommended that everybody have this as a blueprint to follow, rather than we have to go behind the scenes and create plans and say, look, we're going to work with functional medicine doctors, we're going to work with different style of practitioners, and we have to really backdoor a system like this, rather than this being something that we just approach as, why wouldn't everybody do it?
That's a good question, and I hope everybody does do it. That's why I've teamed up with doctors across the nation to bring this message to more people. And I think we're moving in the right direction with Make America Healthy Again. Getting the harmful seed oils out of our diet is a huge thing. I think that's actually more important than getting sugar out of the diet, because these things destroy so many things. And the seed oils stimulate your endocannabinoid system, which gives you the munchies, which makes you gain weight and want more of those things. And it makes your cell membranes not function correctly. So just making a few changes, like getting good oils in your diet, removing the bad ones can be a huge game changer. And they're starting to push in that direction now.
What are the better oils?
I recommend 3: avocado, olive, and coconut oil. Those are the only 3 oils that basically we use. They're the highest in omega-3. They are the lowest in omega-6. And in America, we get way, way too much omega-6. All these other seed oils are loaded with linoleic acid. One of the things in these seed oils that triggers inflammation, that triggers a whole host of health problems.
Mm-hmm. I think one of the most interesting things, it's definitely interesting, but a trigger statement that you had, which I think is really hot button here. You said getting harmful seed oils out of the diet may be more important than getting sugar out of the diet. And that is, I've never heard someone say that so straightforwardly. And obviously, as we know, I mean, sugar in the diet and the carbohydrate-laden diet has led to an epidemic of cardiometabolic disease and diabetes and a whole bunch of stuff. So to hear someone say, yeah, that's destructive, but you know what's more destructive are the seed oils. I think that's a profound statement for our listeners to really take home. Yes, reduce your sugars, but also get those seed oils out of the diet. That's a great
Yeah, there's a lot of research that confirms to me that's the correct order. Get the seed oils out. And I think you're going to be seeing a huge push for that in the coming months and years.
Well, there's somebody that Christy just asked a question here on the screen. And she says, how do you get added fiber if following a keto diet or a carnivore type eating?
You don't. I'm sorry. I'm not a keto guy. I actually used keto diets 30 years ago, but in fact, I have a YouTube channel and I made a series of videos, 7 reasons to stop keto now. And I got a lot of hate mail because there's a lot of keto people out there. I think there's a time and a place for them, but it is not the best weight loss method. It's not sustainable. A third of the weight you lose is going to be from loss of muscle mass, which is not helpful at all. It's just better to get in food groups. And if you're cutting out the plants, lots of healthy plants, you're going to have problems. And one of the problems would be lack of fiber.
Mm-hmm. I want to just jump in here too with this because, and Pat, I don't know if you know this, but I'm writing a book right now called Carnivore Consciousness. So I'm really deep in the physiology, even the anthropology, evolutionary biology of this discussion. Prior to this, I wrote a book called The Epic 5 Plan that outlined a diet that I'd used to help reverse autoimmunity. And basically, I haven't seen your exact diet, but I suspect it's similar in that it's very low glycemic, high in fiber, and then clean animal products. And depending on dairy, that's its own question, right? So all of that said, I've been exploring carnivore, and I'm fascinated by Christy's question. I'm fascinated by your answer as well. What I've been saying is, I think, like you said, there's a time and a place for things, and also just to clarify, there's a big difference between keto and carnivore. So just to emphasize that carnivore is really emphasizing protein for the most part. But all of that said, I think there's a time and a place for these things too. I think the bigger question that I have is, I wonder for the people that are utilizing either keto or paleo or carnivore for whatever reasons that they're doing it, I wonder what happens when we transition from that keto, paleo, carnivore into a more fiber-laden diet. I'm curious if you've had that experience with, since you've worked with all these patients with weight loss and have tried keto and carnivore and paleo, when you transition people off of those types of diets onto a more sustainable diet, which I agree with you, have you noticed anything change with their physiology, especially digestion?
Absolutely. I'm not pushing vegetarian methods or anything like that. On my plan, people eat meat. In fact, my plan could best be described as a modified Mediterranean diet.
I like that.
Modified because they got too many grains in there, and modified because they've got too much meat in there. Eat some meat, and eat some grains, but don't go crazy with that. Mm-hmm. In fact, there's 10 food groups that I have my people eat from. Each category is very important. The legumes, people don't know what a legume is these days, but it needs to be a part of your diet because your microbiome loves legumes. And in the transition, here's what studies show. If you eat lots of meat, within days, your microbiome changes for the worse. If you eat lots of plants, within days, your microbiome changes for the better. So that's just an easy signal that, all right, there's a better path here than some of these plans.
I think it's interesting too, especially with plant-based diets. I'd love to hear your thoughts on ideas like lectins. If we go back to like Plant Paradox with Stephen Gundry, and I'm sure that you're familiar with that work. I get a lot of questions, and I've explored this with my own clients and my own self. This whole lectin question. Do people, what have you found with lectins? And just so that people know, lectins are what are considered, and I'm going to use this very broadly, but they're poisons, I guess, if you will, that plants create to keep animals from eating them so they can keep thriving. Most lectins have symbiotically evolved with humans so that we can eat most plants. Some lectins are really rough on the system for some people, like gluten. Gluten is a lectin that we've all heard of. So coming back to Gundry's premise, the Plant Paradox, where he says, hey, part of the problem with chronic illness, especially with autoimmunity, is that people are eating plants with lectins. Certainly, I'd love to hear your thoughts on that. I mean, that's a great topic.
Yeah, bottom line, I don't think there's much to it. I don't think you have to worry about it. I think, in fact, Dr. Greger, Nutrition Facts guy, he's done a lot of research on this, and that's a good source to look at for lectins. I think it's a small factor. I think it's connected with some sales gimmicks and things like that. So eat what God grew, and I think you'll be happy and healthy.
I think that's, I just want to kind of double down on what you said. I've kind of found the same thing experimenting with myself and with my clients. I haven't really seen a big difference with looking through the lectins lens myself, but I always like to ask it because it's such a hot button topic again that people ask about.
And earlier I heard you talking about, Dr. Luse, I heard you talking about digestive systems as one of the things that you focus on in the 7-system plan. Celiac, I'm really curious about that because there's a lot of people out there dealing with, like, I've heard of a book called like wheat belly, and people that get celiac, or people are starting to get like outside symptoms on their skin from eating wheat. And you said eat moderation of all things and have that a part of your diet plan. How have you seen wheat change over the 45 years of your career? And do you think it has any traces to glyphosate and how they're spraying the food with unnatural lectins, if you will, and really polluting the source of what we get? Because what I've heard over time, and this is a really cool opportunity for me to talk to you about this stuff, because I'd never get a chance to talk about this stuff because I only talked about chiropractic stuff. But when you think about it, I've always been told you are what you eat. And then I heard that you are what you eat eats. And then whatever you eat eats is what they're eating. And then that's a cycle of like the system of what we get. So if people are getting celiac and they're getting glyphosate, or however you say that word, that onto your food source, is it somebody having a reaction to the wheat or somebody having a reaction to this chemical?
Yes. It's both. The wheat we're eating today is nothing like what the wheat was 100 years ago. And that's unfortunate. It's been modified to make it produce and yield like they want. And there's a lot of bad things that came with that. A lot of people are gluten sensitive. They're not intolerant, but they're sensitive, and that can cause significant problems. So wheat's one of the things, especially if you have an autoimmune disease or gut problems or skin problems, you need to cut gluten out. You got thyroid problems. There's no way you should be using gluten, because that tissue mimics gluten in your body, can just start attacking your thyroid. And that's why we have the epidemic of thyroid problems in America. Mm-hmm. And there's beginning to be a push to get these herbicides and pesticides restricted, and we need to do that. We know, absolutely, they cause cancer.
Yeah, absolutely they do. And I think, it's interesting. Our older daughter, back when she was in high school a number of years ago, she just graduated from college, let's go. But she did a capstone research project looking at glyphosate exposure in urine samples, of different population. And I can't remember what the percentage was, but it was nearly 100%. It was literally nearly 100% of everybody tested, whether they ate, regular food or fully organic, farm to table stuff. Everybody had glyphosate toxicities. And I just to kind of come back to what James was saying, I think it's an interesting question. If we all have glyphosate toxicity, are we suffering from that? Because that looks a whole lot like gluten sensitivity as well. Or is it that we're spraying it on the gluten? But like you said, the wheat that we have is just so modified now that it doesn't even resemble what we had ancestrally. So it's just a very different concept. Yeah.
One of the things that glyphosate causes is leaky gut. You put intestinal cells in a petri dish and let them grow, and then you put some glyphosate in there and you'll have leaky gut almost instantly. Well, leaky gut just opens you up to a ton of different health problems.
Yeah, it does. Well, absolutely.
Well, Jason and I both come from Iowa, and there used to be a real important sector of farming there. And farming used to be, like, as they say, the backbone of the breadbasket, or the backbone of America. And as I grew up, I started to realize that they were actually paying farmers not to farm and subsidizing them to do a monoculture crop and have it all be GMO, whether it be corn or soybeans or wheat. And I think that was probably the first stage in the destruction of the gut biome and creating these downstream effects like leaky gut is we aren't eating real food. I was just driving around in South Dakota, went to Custer State Park, looking at the buffalo and the antelope and stuff. And my Uber driver was drinking 2 sodas a day. And I said to him, if you started to look at that sugar that you're intaking, it's all GMO. It's all from corn that's genetically modified. And if you looked at sugar under a microscope, it looks like it's dangerous. It looks like jagged and edgy. And I was like, if you're going to be ingesting that constantly, this ties into Jan's question here. What is the number one thing to do for calcification of your arteries? And if you're already eating the EPIC diet. So my question is, if people are eating this GMO stuff and it's calcifying their arteries and their veins and giving them heart problems, what can they do to start fixing that?
Well, a couple things. Number one, eat real food. Eat real food. There's imaging studies that show 3 weeks on a plant-based diet, these arteries begin to clear out.
Wow.
You start getting the plaque. 3 weeks. Now, the bigger blood vessels take longer, but I see that in my patients. I've seen big blood vessels that have been reversed. So you got to be putting the right food in there. That is absolutely the biggest factor. But there's other things too. Vitamin K2, if you've heard of that, vitamin K2 kind of tells calcium where to go in the body. And if you're taking vitamin D without K2, that's not the best thing to do. You want to take them both together because the vitamin D helps you build bone, helps calcium to get where it needs to, but the K2 helps to keep it from lining up in your arteries.
Dr. Pat, I'm going to jump in real fast here because I get this from my clients, and I'm sure you get it too, and we hear it. Vitamin K2, as you said, helps direct that calcium out of the arteries and into the bones and the tissues and all those things that we need the calcium in. Can you explain, I don't know if this is the right way to ask this question, can you explain why most doctors get what you said confused with regular vitamin K and why they're like, don't take vitamin K? Because a lot of doctors say that, don't take vitamin K. But can you explain the difference here?
Well, if you're on a blood thinner, then you have to be a little careful with vitamin K. But that's really the only reason. And you don't need massive amounts of it in your supplements. But taking some vitamin K, especially if you're taking vitamin D, is a very, very good idea. And everybody should be taking vitamin D. I test patients in my office, 100% are deficient if they're not taking vitamin D. We get it from the sun, and at least 6 months of the year where we're at, we don't get any sun that can form vitamin D.
What's your take on synthetic vitamin D as opposed to natural sources?
Don't use it. Yeah, D2, it does not do the same thing in your body as D3. D3 is the natural one. And if you go to your doctor and he finds out you're deficient, he's likely to put you on a high dose of D2, the synthetic form. That's what they frequently use, but they don't do things the same in your body. In fact, there have been studies that showed D3 increases lifespan significantly. D2 doesn't increase it. In fact, it may even shorten it.
So it's just as evil as giving somebody a pharmaceutical.
Yeah, it would be in that category.
Well, I mean, this is an enlightening conversation for me because I get a chance to go just off the rails and get all my curiosity answered by you, Dr. Pat. But as you've gone through this journey, you started to realize how sick people were. What was your cornerstone moment where you were like, okay, I have all the tools in my kit now to start making people healthy, and it starts with their metabolic syndrome?
Well, one of the key moments, and I do have this in my course that people can go through, but one of the key moments was when I started reversing autoimmune disease. Now, autoimmune disease, if you talk to most doctors, they'll say, you got it, you're always going to have it, you can never get rid of it. But we started seeing rheumatoid disappear. I mean, even their blood immune factors were normal after going through the program. And that is huge. It's just unbelievable what your body can do if you're just doing a few simple things. And that's what I try to do. I try to make this simple. You don't have to do thousands or hundreds of things, but if you give each system a few things, pretty soon they start working correctly. And the more one system works correctly, the better another system works correctly. And it's kind of a chain reaction.
So would you walk us through that threefold strategy that you're talking about and how you start to work step by step in order to, I guess, for the or for the older generation, play Columbo and the sleuth of people's health?
Yeah, it really doesn't have to. This is the other thing that just amazes me. It doesn't have to be that complicated for most people. For 95% of the population with health problems, these simple steps will fix them. Now, sometimes you got to dig in deeper and you got to do more testing, but most of the time you don't. I have a simple system survey that people can fill out. And you do that, you're going to see which system's lighting up and giving you the problems. And then we give you tools after we have evaluated your system to start getting these systems working correctly.
I like that. So coming back to the systems, and I love the tool. I can't wait to go jump on that and use that tool myself and see what lights up for me. When you are looking at the population as a whole, what top 1 or 2 or 3 systems would you say light up the most for people?
Well, structural system, digestive, and then probably communication. So the hormones are a mess in America. Look at what's happening to the sperm count. Look what's happening to testosterone. My testosterone is still 850, and I'm going to be 70 this year. And I don't take testosterone. It's just natural. And I see my patients when they go through the program. Typically, it's not unusual for people in 90 days to double their testosterone.
Wow.
And that just gives men a boost, women a boost. I mean, everybody does better with more testosterone.
Absolutely. And I think, I'm just kind of thinking through the process, and I love the way that you think. It's, like I said, it's very similar to the way my far better half, Rachel, and I think, which is getting rid of the bad stuff, put in the good stuff, and help the system be balanced. I love the simplicity of it. Coming back to that, with communication and with the hormones and jumping up like that, it's interesting because I'm curious what your thoughts are. I know that we're putting the good stuff in, but it's interesting. As we're eating real whole foods that are not genetically modified and not sprayed with, pesticides and herbicides and who knows what else is on that stuff, right? Certainly a lot of that I don't know that a lot of people realize, a lot of the stuff that we're putting into our foods, our water, even our air supply, sometimes it's just, toxic runoff as well, but a lot of it is what we call plasticizers. And a lot of those plasticizers are very estrogenic. Estrogenic meaning talking about estrogen-like hormones. They're called xenoestrogens. They're not real estrogens, but they act like estrogens in the body. And in men and in women, but in men, what Dr. Pat's alluding to here with the testosterone count going down and the sperm count going down is that we are all inundated with all sorts of toxic chemistry, including these xenoestrogens that are driving our hormones, down into the dumps. And Dr. Pat, I think it's interesting that basically what you're saying is, let's not eat that box can wrap packaged processed crap. Let's eat real food that came from the ground that God gave us, like you said, and, support your body with, the systems that we need. And then all of a sudden, wow, the hormones come back without, injecting this or doing this or that. I love that. I love the testosterone. How about with women? I think the women's counterpart to that. I mean, women need testosterone too. We all feel better on it. But the thing that I see when I do laboratory testing is progesterone failing, at some point with a lot of women as well. And I would say, I just about said, especially as we age, but the reality is I'm seeing no hormones. I mean, just complete hormonal failure in 20 something year olds as well. Do you see the same response? I know we talked about testosterone. Do you see the same response when you have your female clients or the doctors that you're working with, their female clients, putting them on the 7 systems plan, including the diet? Do you see their progesterones coming up or their other hormones balancing beyond testosterone?
Yeah, it kind of depends what stage in life they are, how much you can change hormones, but you can definitely balance them and you can definitely improve them. Females and males, where's estrogen produced? Well, testicles and ovaries, but fat cells produce estrogens. You get a man with a lot of fat. What's he get? He gets man boobs. That's because his estrogen's too high. So we get rid of the fat cells, where your body quits making all that excess estrogen, which is a driver of cancer and a lot of other problems. And then things are back to where they should be.
It's super interesting, right? And I think that, it's interesting too. You and I know this. I'm sure James knows this. A lot of our listeners know this, but I think people inherently know they have hormonal imbalances. I mean, besides just hearing it all the time and Googling it, I think people inherently feel it and know it. And then they go to I call them the RDs, the regular doctors, right? They go to their RDs, or they go to their specialists, like their OBGYN hormonal specialist, and they get the same thing. We don't need to test hormones. This is with women. I've talked to OBGYNs like this. They say if they're still cycling, put them on birth control and Zoloft. And if they're not cycling, put them on Prempro and Zoloft. And that's the depth. And I think women, unfortunately, have been duped to think, I'm not picking on all OBGYNs. I'm really not. We know some great OBGYNs, but I think women have been duped to believe that their general practitioners, their women's health specialists, their OBGYNs are actually fully trained in hormones, in balancing hormones and all that. And the reality is they're just not. And they're certainly not trained in any modalities, including diet and seven systems integration, to help bring those hormones back online. So I appreciate your perspective on this. I really do. I want to jump into Jan's question, back to vitamin D. I have my own answer for this. Is prescription vitamin D3 cholecalciferol good or bad?
Well, if it's D3, it would be good. It would be a lot better if it had K2 with it.
I agree with that. I agree with that. And there's a couple of ways that people can get vitamin D3 that are natural. And one of them is from different types of fish oil. They can derive it from there. And another one is from lanolin, which is sheep's wool oil. And they can derive vitamin D3 from that as well. So I don't know if there's a good vegan source of D3. Maybe there is. But I know there's at least vegetarian sources with the lanolin. You don't have to have that. So that's a great question.
It's very difficult to get enough D3 from any food source. Very extremely difficult. Yeah. You could get some, like milk's fortified with vitamin D, which I don't think you should use, but you'd have to drink gallons to get the right dose. So
I want to comment on what you just said.
Sunlight. Get some sunlight and supplement that with vitamin D3.
I agree. And I want to comment on something real fast when you said it's fortified. This is my 2 cents. If something's fortified, you probably shouldn't eat it. I'm just going to put that out there. I know it sounds but it's fortified. It's fortified because it's so devoid of nutrients that to call it food, they had to put vitamins and stuff back in, and they put the cheapest vitamins they can find. And they're like, oh, it's fortified for you guys. Listen, Don't eat fortified food. Dr. Pat, do you agree with me? Feel free to disagree.
No, I agree.
I love how simple, straight line Dr. Pat is with his responses to most of our questions for him. But I want to go back to something you said when Dr. Jason asked you the main concerns you see in patients that come into you. And the first thing you said is structural. Elaborate on that a little bit, because I think that's Dr. Jason being a chiropractor, you being a chiropractor, me being a chiropractic advocate. I think the world needs to understand chiropractic philosophy a little bit and how structural alignment in the body matters for full body health and full body functionality.
Well, let me put it this way. You can have everything in your body working perfectly. If your bones and joints are not, you won't be able to enjoy anything. The spine is extremely important. And we see this all the time. We've got people in their 40s that come out and they've got significant disc degeneration already in their 40s. Or they've had surgeries. We see people every week that have had spinal surgeries, and now they've got problems with the disc above or below that, and it just goes on and on. A lot of that can be helped with keeping good alignment. You got to keep good alignment. You got to keep your spine in line. I tell people you got to get adjusted every month. You got to have a spinal checkup, and then you got to make sure you're giving your body what it needs. A lot of these disc and joint problems are driven by inflammation. Mm-hmm. We can turn off inflammation. You can turn it on with processed food. You can turn it off with real food and some supplements. Inflammation is a huge factor in a myriad of health problems.
Absolutely. And I just want to kind of double down. Many years ago, back when I was a student, getting my first doctorate degree, which was in chiropractic, I attended a kind of a student lecture by Dr. David Siemens, who was talking about, hey, you guys are learning to adjust people and help them with, the joint, subluxations. Have you ever thought about a nutritional subluxation or a nutritional adjustment? And when people are in inflammation, here's X, Y, and Z that we can do. Granted, this was many years ago. This was like 25, 30 years. This is like 30 years ago. But I mean, at that point, he was just talking about, fish oils and some basic omega-3s. And there's so much that we can do with nutrition, even just with diet, certainly with supplementation now, with inflammation. All of that said, I think, as I age, I know that I get adjusted. I mean, right now I'm getting adjusted 3 times a week because I'm in a corrective phase with a chiropractor. But I get adjusted almost every week myself. My body feels better. I tend to hold my adjustments. I have less pain. If I go, a month, I mean, that's about as long as I'd ever want to go, but I love my chiropractic care. A question came up, and I think it's a really good question, especially with what we're talking about with restorative care that we're talking about, whether it's chiropractic, nutrition, integrating the 7 systems, all of that, restorative care. There's also a prevention with this as well, right? So there's a lot of preventive measures. People don't have to be sick to implement the 7 systems. If I'm right? I mean, we could take a healthy kid as an example and start working with those 7 systems and supporting that child as they're growing, as they're aging. And we're talking about, MAHA, Make America Healthy Again. And coming back to what James said up front, what can we do to help us Americans, all of us, transition from a reactive healthcare? I'm sick and now I need to go get help and the system failed me. And I found, either Dr. Pat or Dr. Jason or whoever it is. And, so it's a long road. What can we do to flip-flop that, to invert it and say, hey, let's just prevent it to begin with? Like, let's teach kids how to drink enough water and how to eat healthy food and move the right way and regulate their nervous system, for the love of God, and, have good sleep hygiene and have, proper community involvement. What do we have to do to flip-flop this? Why are we where we are? And what do we have to do to flip-flop it?
Well, I think we need to do what you're doing on this podcast and what you do in your office and what I do in my office. You got to educate people. You got to get the message out. You got to let them know how important these things are. And unfortunately, a lot of people have to come to a crisis point where they need a stent or they have cancer or they have diabetes to turn things around. But the more I've got people going through my program now that are healthy. They're in real good shape, but they just want to make sure they're covering all the bases. They're keeping everything healthy. And that's a much better path. But even if you've gone down that road, Andy came in to see me January of last year, a diabetic, 100 pounds overweight, 10 medications, no energy. And the guy's only 40 years old, but he looks like a wreck. In 10 months, following the 7 systems plan, he lost 100 pounds. In weeks, his diabetes was gone, not months. All medications were gone. And 10 months later, he's at his ideal weight, 100 pounds of weight gone, all medications gone, energy's up, and he's a new person.
That's awesome. I think that's so great. And I just want to say this too, because typically, again, I'm a big fan of, like I said, starting as early as we can. But you're right. Most people find, people like you after they've hit a crisis. They've unfortunately gone through the general medical system. And there are great doctors in the general medical system. I don't want to poo-poo it, but we are, as we all know, the most expensive, the least effective, and the most dangerous, quote, healthcare on the planet. So by the time that system fails them, and it fails everybody eventually, they find someone like you. And it's a long road to get there. But I do want to say this. And one of the things I hear is, oh my God, if you knew how much money I've spent, on this and nothing's worked, and then they finally find somebody like Dr. Pat that's like, oh my gosh, this whole system works and it makes sense, right? I just want to say this to those people seeking right now. If you're still out there seeking this or that, I tell my patients or my clients 2 things. And when I'm speaking publicly, I say these things a lot. No one ever goes bankrupt from investing in their health. I just want to say that very clearly. The financial burden is not investing in your health. It's investing on all the shit therapies that are out there that are just going to make you sicker and not get you well and just drag you along for decades. Besides the quality of life that you lose, the money invested. And that's where people go bankrupt. Number 1 cause of bankruptcy in America is medical bills, like not health bills. I want to be clear. These are not health bills. These are medical bills. The second thing that I tell people, and Dr. Pat, I'm sure you're going to agree with me on this, and I don't know where I heard this. I'm not smart enough to make this statement up, but it's such a good statement. I tell my clients, and when I'm speaking publicly, really, we all are either going to be examples or warnings to those that are watching us or those following behind us, like our children, our families. I want to be an example. I don't want to be a warning. My brother died from, sudden cardiac arrest last June. Stood up watching TV and died suddenly. Not an old guy at all. I don't want to be a warning like that. You know what I mean? So I'd love to hear your thoughts on all of that.
Yeah, you're exactly right. And unfortunately, I see that happening all the time. We just had a guy I know, he's not that old, and he died of a heart attack just like that.
Yeah.
I have had a coronary calcium score test done. I just got curious. That's one of the best tests to see how much calcium's in your heart arteries. And it scored a perfect 0.
That's awesome.
I have none in my heart. And I've got classmates that have had quadruple bypasses. Their coronary calcium score was 700. So it's totally controllable, and a lot of times totally reversible if people will just do what they need to do.
Go ahead, Jim.
I just wanted to jump in for a quick minute. I made a documentary film called Chiropractic, the documentary, back in 2015. It's almost a decade now. It's hard for me to believe that. But back to what Dr. Jason said, is one of the last statements inside of the movie was, we spend the most on healthcare as a system in the world, and we're only 5% of the world population. But why are we still so sick? And that has always been like a 1,000-pound weight in my heart. And it's always stuck with me ever since I heard that one statement. And coming from the structural conversation you guys were having about chiropractic and at least getting checked monthly, or even Dr. Jason getting checked and adjusted 3 times a week right now in his phase of care, I like to get adjusted once a week. And I would recommend anybody that follows me is to get checked by a chiropractor once a week for the rest of your life, whether it's the first day in the first breath of your life, or you just found it at 50 some years old, or you're like that guy that you said that came in at 40 years old, Aaron, that now his life is a complete different situation. But the thing that I want everybody to kind of understand is people are sicker than they ever were before metabolically. And when you started 45 years ago, you might just be able to get somebody and get them under a 6-care visit plan and adjust them 6 times, and their life turns around and they're better. But now we have such a deficient group of humans that are actively desperate for what we're talking about on today's show. And when I started working in chiropractic as a tech 16 years ago, the thing that you said, Dr. Pat, is the way that we get to more people is through education and doing shows like this and exposing these truths and really having these conversational topics that most people don't have access to. Honestly, they don't. They might not get them from Joe Rogan. They might not get them from Andrew Huberman. They might not get them from some of these really important people, the Gundersons out there. But what they're going to do, Dr. Luse, is they're going to get them from Dr. Jason Bradley and myself, because I believe we're coming to this world with a whole different ethos. It's not about us. It's not about our bandstand. It's about sharing quality content with great information and takeaways that the people that are going to be super fans of this show, this being episode 1, these people are going to be sharing and digesting and taking notes. And eventually they're going to be circling your block on the internet, wanting information from Dr. Pat Luse, because they're going to want your systems, because they aren't going to want to be sick anymore. They aren't going to want their kids to be sick anymore. They aren't going to want their grandkids to be sick anymore. And if I've learned anything over time, somebody that gets to that adult age, one of their favorite things to do is spend time with their grandkids. And what happens is quality of life diminishes. And if I've learned anything about the insurance model, is everybody wants to link it to activities of daily living. And if we have quality activities of daily living into old age and longevity, then we can teach that, like Dr. Jason's saying, he doesn't want to be the smoke signal. He wants to be the reason for people learning while he's still vital. And I've never met anybody that took more pharmaceutical drugs or had more surgeries that had more vitality.
Right.
They just don't. They are diminished versions of themselves that will never repair back to full speed unless they find a guy like you, Dr. Pat, that they can start following a plan. But as they say in the Hippocratic Oath, first do no harm. So if anybody's out there and they're in the medical world and they're watching this, please do no harm and follow the Hippocratic Oath why you became a doctor in the first place. And I think back to that question that Dr. Jason that we were tackling was, it's easier to make healthy children than to fix broken adults. And if everybody knew what we know, they would do what we do. So we have to keep on shouting from the rooftop for the next 500 years about the models that we believe in, because if we don't, then who are they going to go find and who are they going to trust? And I tell people all the time when I schedule people into chiropractic visits, I say the number one reason people don't choose us first is because they don't know where to go or they don't know who to trust. So if we can build that know, like, and trust factor into this functional medicine world, that's where people are all going towards. Because our topic earlier, what did we hammer on? Well, one of the most big reasons why people find Dr. Pat Luse is because autoimmune conditions, and people are sick and they don't know what the hell it's called anymore.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the education and word of mouth is huge. Like Andy, we talked about earlier, the diabetic that we helped. That was January of last year. He finished in October of last year. Since that time, he has referred 20 patients into my office.
Amen.
That's awesome.
And that's because
that's how it goes.
People see him and say, what did you do? What happened to you? And then he tells them,
he's a walking billboard.
Right.
Yeah, that's a nice thing. And that's why this is such a great addition to the chiropractic practice. We need to fix their structure. We need to keep their joints and bones aligned, but we got to go the next step, like you were talking about earlier. We got to put out inflammation. We got to make sure the vitamin D's right.
I agree with that. And I just want to, I know we're coming up on time here. So I just want to just talk very quickly. We mentioned it a couple of times. I want to be really clear. Your 7 systems plan, our listeners that are not providers, they can plug into it, and we'll have all the links. Set up when we get the show produced and boxed and everything. But people can plug in there, but you also have a whole system of training for practitioners, other doctors and providers that want to implement your system in their practices, which I think is revolutionary. How many doctors have you trained to do this system?
Hundreds. And we now have providers in 14 states. We just added Washington State, so we're getting more. It's mostly Midwest, but we've got chiropractors, medical doctors, nurse practitioners, health coaches that see what I do and say, I want that. A lot of functional medicine doctors end up joining because of the educational component.
Yeah.
I tell people, you can put people on vitamins, you can put them on a good diet. If you don't educate them, they're not going to stay on that. They got to know why they're doing it. Why are they taking vitamin D? They got to know why the vitamin D is important. Yeah. Why they got to protect their microbiome. Oh, they'll learn how the microbiome, how important it is, and they're more likely to just keep at things. So I love working with docs. They can access my link to hook up on a call with me, but I love helping them get things up and going in their office. And I've made it simple. This just does not need to be a complicated process.
That tees it up for me because I'm really curious. If today somebody's listening and they got to this point in the episode, what are 3 things that our listeners could start doing today to begin optimizing their body systems?
Well, you have to pick a good plan. And I think the 7 system plan, eating plan, is the best plan out there. And by the way, my course is updated every week. So when I teach a course, I incorporate new information and I get it to people. So going through my course is a great thing too. You got to start eating right. You got to move, and you got to take care of your spine. If you do those things, you're going to be a long ways down the road. But there's other things too. It's just lots of little tips. One of the things, people struggle with their weight. What you eat for the first meal of the day is going to determine how much you eat the rest of the day. And I don't mean a little bit. I mean 81% more if you eat the wrong foods for the first meal. So we just get them set up on a program where they're always eating a good first meal, and that doesn't have to be breakfast. And lots of other tips like that make things easy.
Well, I honestly want people to walk away from these episodes empowered. I want them to walk away with like a fire in their belly to say, I can change what's going on in my life today and I can get better faster. And now I have resources, I have a plan, and now I have a guide, and now I have somebody that I can know, like, and trust and then refer to. So I think it's a really great episode with you today. And I really appreciate you being so open to sharing your expertise and your knowledge and allowing us to have some free range with you too, because we're a couple dog journalists, and we're both really interested in the health and wellness world. And we are going to make an alignment with subject matter experts like yourself that are going to give a new frontier for people looking for information like this. And they're going to have resources now. We're going to have a depository of content that people globally are going to have access to now, that are going to find you, Dr. Pat, and say, that's my man, and he's going to help me, and I trust him. And I think that that's what we do here, is we'll bring more credibility to voices like yourself that are all looking for somebody that's going to be their solution for giving them that trust. So I just want to thank you for being that guest that we have today that can actually give somebody the trust after 45 years of being out there in the field, that I know that there's people out there looking for you right now. And because of this episode and this education we're providing, they're going to find you.
Absolutely. I'll say amen to that, because that's such a powerful, message to end on. And yeah, Pat, thank you, Dr. Pat, thank you so much for being on our show today. It was really a fascinating conversation. We dove into some topics that I actually didn't expect to, but I got some really great info from you, and I'm sure our listeners did as well. For those, I took
notes too.
I did too. I have pages of notes over here. So for our listeners, we'll be doing show notes. We'll make sure that you have the link to connect with Dr. Pat and his team. And for the providers, certainly we'll help you get connected with Dr. Pat as well. And I just want to say again, Dr. Pat, thank you for being on the show today. And for all of you that joined us today, thank you guys for listening today. It was a lot of fun. This is our inaugural episode, so thank you guys for joining us for that. And I can't wait to see you on the next show. We have some really great people coming up. I'll dangle that carrot and keep it a little surprise. But we have some really great shows coming up. Follow us on Facebook and YouTube. And James, where else can they follow us?
Well, I think they're going to love to follow our shorts on Instagram. Yeah. And those will take them to the full length episodes. And our micro content is going to be something that's going to be easy, quick hits. So we're going to pull a lot of great content from this interview today and make it actionable that people can learn from it in case they don't have an hour of time to sit for the whole interview. We're going to pull snippets out of all of our interviews so people have like actionable information that they can link to. And then we're also going to link that back to your website, Dr. Pat, which is, I believe, 7systemplan.com. And that's the number 7 and spelled SYSTEMSPLAN.com. And we're going to make sure that everything links back to you. And we also want people to subscribe and like and share our content. So if you love Dr. Pat and you're one of his tribe, please become a subscriber to the Get Better Faster podcast. I believe that as we grow and build more momentum as a brand, this is going to be the go-to place for people to find resources for managing their health and finding ways to get more included into the longevity in the biohacking world and the functional medicine world. So once again, Dr. Pat, you're a wealth of knowledge. And Dr. Jason, thanks for co-hosting the show with me. And I think we're going to have a fun future together.
I agree.
Hey, thank you very much for having me. And thank you for what you're doing. This is exactly what America needs. They just need information so that they can start making better choices.
Yes. And to get better faster, right? So, I mean, yes. You're right. Thank you again for helping our guests out and your clients out. And we're going to change the world together, all of us. So, all right, everybody. See you next show.
Bye for now.
Thanks for tuning in to the Get Better Faster podcast. Join the movement and visit getbetterfasterpodcast.com to find all our episodes, micro content, and resources to help you and your family get better faster.